วุฒิสมาชิกวเรนตั้งคำถามเกี่ยวกับข้อเรียกร้องที่ว่าอัตราเงินเฟ้อในสหรัฐถูกกำจัดไปแล้ว
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Secretary Bessent, as one of President Trump's top economic advisors, you have a lot to answer for. Donald Trump campaigned on lowering costs on day one. Those were his words, over and over. But 381 days into his term, Trump's economic policies have driven prices up. Grocery prices are up, electricity prices are up, healthcare prices are up, the cost of building housing is up. President Trump's economic agenda is failing families, but boy, it is working great for Wall Street and Trump's billionaire buddies. There have been massive tax cuts for billionaires. Big bank supervision has been cut to the bone, and sidelining the cops who go after white-collar crime. Meanwhile, middle-class families get the short end of the stick. Unemployment is growing and prices are up. But American families can't even get the basic respect of a straight answer from Team Trump. The president lies about prices being lower when every family who's walked into a grocery store knows that prices are up. Secretary Bessent tells workers that the Trump administration has created a blue-collar boom, while Donald Trump's own Labor Department reports that manufacturing jobs are down by 71,000 since Trump took office. But American families aren't fooled. When Secretary Bessent and President Trump try to tell them that the sky is not blue and that water is not wet, hardworking people know in their pocketbooks just how big those lies are. They also know that Trump and his team don't have any plans to fix what is broken. Secretary Bessent is here today in his role as chair of the Financial Stability Oversight Council. Congress created FSOC after the 2008 financial crash to protect families from large financial institutions that load up on debt and then turn around and crash our economy. Secretary Bessent could have used FSOC over the last year to tighten regulations so that we don't face more bank failures like the Silicon Valley Bank or First Republic Bank that crashed less than 3 years ago. Instead, he has helped to get rid of the guardrails so that banks can load up on even more risk. He's boosted profitability for giant banks and pay for CEOs while making it more likely that all of this ends in yet another taxpayer bailout. And what has he done for consumers? Secretary Bessent tried to shut down the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the agency that has returned more than $21 billion directly to Americans cheated by big banks and giant corporations. He's effectively told the banks they can cheat as many people as they want, and he and Donald Trump will look the other way. But it's not just about rolling back safeguards. Secretary Bessent is ignoring emerging risks in the economy. The private credit market looks like a ticking time bomb. Late last year, Moody's found that banks had $300 billion of exposure and that the risk posed by these shadowy holdings is growing. And as Jamie Dimon said, quote, "When you see one cockroach, there are probably more." But Secretary Bessent and FSOC have their eyes shut tight and have decided they don't see any cockroaches at all. Here's all you need to know about what's happening under President Trump's and Secretary Bessent's watch. Middle-class families are paying higher prices for just about everything, while it becomes harder and harder to get a raise or find a job. Meanwhile, Wall Street CEOs are getting the kid glove treatment as Trump policies may be edging the economy closer and closer to another disastrous financial crash. Now, President Trump is so busy raking in cash from foreign governments and building his gold-encrusted ballroom that he's completely out of touch with how his economy is making life harder for millions of Americans. We are only 1 year into Donald Trump's second term, And if Trump and Bessent don't wake up and change course quickly, the economy may keep delivering for billionaires, but it's going to get even worse for American families. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Secretary Bessent.
Good. Chairman Scott, Ranking Member Warren, and members of the committee, thank you for inviting me to discuss the Financial Stability Oversight Council's 2025 annual report. This report is the culmination of extensive collaboration among FSOC members. I'd like to thank them for their hard work and dedication in advancing the President's bold vision for a better America. Since day one, President Trump has focused on building parallel prosperity, an era of economic expansion where Wall Street and Main Street grow together. To that end, Treasury has tirelessly pursued pro-growth policies to unlock the potential available to all Americans when they are free to save, invest, build businesses, and drive their own economic destinies. The Financial Stability Oversight Council plays an important role in delivering on this agenda. Too often in the past, we have seen regulation by reflex. Rather than preempting crises, regulators have frequently reacted to them after the fact. They played the role of hazmat cleanup team instead of preventing dangerous spillovers in the first place. Regulation by reflex has led to a regulatory myopia that has undermined safety and soundness. Under President Biden, the bank regulators preoccupied themselves with reputation risk, now discredited climate-related financial risk, and other risk, with no clear nexus to safety and soundness. At the same time, they centered supervision on management and other governance matters that distracted examiners and banks' risk managers from the real risk to safety and soundness. The result, predictably, was the second, third, and fourth largest bank failures in U.S. history under his administration. Besides undermining safety and soundness, regulation by reflex has driven excessive regulation. That can lead to economic stagnation, and economic stagnation is itself a threat to financial stability. In calibrating regulations, federal agencies must avoid the temptation to create a zero-risk financial system, which would result in what others have called the stability of the graveyard. FSOC should aim to identify vulnerabilities that could lead to systemic crises and encourage the private sector to mitigate those risks before recommending additional regulation. FSOC should also work with its members to support efforts to avoid or pare back existing regulation that stifles pro-growth lending, capital formation, and innovation. And the best way to achieve these goals is by centering economic growth and economic security at the heart of FSOC's agenda. Promoting economic growth and economic security is essential to ensuring financial stability. Economic growth strengthens households, business, and financial institution balance sheets, creating capital buffers that reduce the risk of defaults and financial stress. And economic security reinforces domestic production capacity, raising living standards, while reducing vulnerability to external shocks and supply chain disruptions. FSOC's annual report prioritizes economic growth and economic security accordingly, with a specific focus on our four policy areas: treasury markets, cybersecurity, regulatory modernization, and AI. First, the Council is ensuring that the U.S. Treasury market remains the deepest and most liquid in the world. The Council is supporting efforts by member agencies to strengthen this market against future shocks, including through the Interagency Working Group on Treasury Market Surveillance and the Market Resilience Working Group. Ongoing monitoring and targeted reforms by individual agencies remain essential to financial stability. Second, the Council is taking action to protect our financial system from increasingly sophisticated cyber attacks. Nation-state actors and criminal groups continue to target our financial institutions and critical infrastructure. To address this risk, the Council is supporting expanded information sharing, joint monitoring, and scenario-based exercises, and it is emphasizing the need for regulated firms to manage cyber risks tied to third-party service providers. Third, the Council is committed to supporting efforts to modernize supervisory and regulatory frameworks for banks and credit unions. Going forward, regulation and supervision should address material risk, enhance transparency, and reduce unnecessary burdens, particularly for community banks. Fourth, the Council is prioritizing the responsible use of artificial intelligence to strengthen financial stability. The Council is working with public and private sector partners, including international counterparts, to enhance system resilience while closely monitoring emerging risk. I will close by highlighting our progress in enhancing the utility of our annual report. In this year's report, FSOC shifted away from its past approach, where nearly every major market and financial sector was described as a financial stability vulnerability. By introducing a new structure centered on fostering economic growth and security, we are tuning out the white noise to concentrate on the issues that matter most for U.S. financial stability. With this overview, I look forward to taking your questions.
Thank you, Secretary. And to all the members, we have essentially full attendance, and it looks like everyone wants to ask a question, so I will be pretty consistent on calling us to 5 minutes. Just want to make sure that you guys have a little time to prepare for that.
Okay.
Got it?
Just so long as it's everybody else.
Well, of course, yes. We'll work on that.
Okay.
Secretary, I'd love to give you a couple minutes to respond to some of the things the ranking member said, starting with the fact that 2 of the 3 largest bank failures in American history happened under President Biden, not President Trump. Correct?
Yep.
Correct.
Number 2, under President Biden, we saw devastation in household after household after household. He dug a big hole where the average family was losing at the end of his term over $1,000 a month in spending power. Accurate?
I would say workers suffered under policies championed by the Biden-Warren economy.
And President Trump has had to fill that hole. As a matter of fact, we've seen some of the strongest GDP growth that we've seen in decades.
We've seen strong GDP growth in spite of many, but not all, of the members on the right, or my right side of the room, voting for the longest government shutdown in history. Despite that, we have seen extremely strong economic growth.
And if you look at the success, and this doesn't get a lot of attention, but let's make sure that it gets more today. If you look at the success of the Working Families Tax Cut bill, for those folks in blue-collar America, for the folks who are working every single day, sometimes 2 jobs, trying to make sure that their ends meet, when they look at sitting down at the kitchen table, wondering if anyone is paying attention in Washington to the suffering and the challenges around the country in their household, the answer today is absolutely, positively, unequivocally yes. We know that because in the Working Families Tax Cut bill, we saw tips. If you earn tips in America, your taxes went down significantly. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, sir. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, deductibility of auto loans for American-made cars, and every Democrat voted against that and in favor of the largest tax hike in history.
Now, on top of that, because we understand that raising children have never been more expensive, and frankly, if you looked at the attempt of my friends on the left on child care, some of their proposals would have taken child care from average of $15,300 to $29,000 in some of the estimates given by their bill that they wanted to get passed under President Biden. We actually increased the child tax credit to $2,250, $2,200, right? $2,200. So when you compare the 2 economies and compare the 2 levels of leadership that we're seeing in great contrast, back-to-back leadership, there's no question that if you're looking for someone focusing on working class Americans, undeniably, that would be the Trump economy and the Trump administration.
Mr. Chairman, during Joe Biden's tenure, CPI was 4.7% on an annualized basis. Cumulative CPI was 21.5%. There was a loss of real purchasing power for working families. Thus far, we have seen an increase in real wages. CPI for 2025 was 2.7%, And we have seen it fall for the past 3 months to 2.1. And there is an index called Trueflation, which is observed inflation, not measured inflation, which comes with a lag, that just fell below 1%.
Wow. I only have a minute left. So I'm holding everyone to the same standard, including myself. So here's probably not my last question, but I'm getting close to the end. When inflation in 2021 hit 9%, bad or good for the American economy?
Terrible. Terrible for the American economy, terrible for the American people.
Number two, when President Trump has been able to keep inflation under 3%, still heading towards our goal of 2%, much, much better for our economy. And as a result, interest rates have been able to come down consistently.
Yes, we've seen the interest rates come down this year, and the 10-year U.S. Treasury had its best year since 2020, when the bond markets and our G7 colleagues actually had rate hikes. We had rate decreases.
I only have 10 seconds. At the end of the day, home ownership and affordability is more likely now in the Trump economy than it ever would have been under the Biden economy. Ranking member?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So for a solid year while he ran for president, Donald Trump promised pretty much every day that he was going to lower costs on day one, if he was elected. Those were his words, not mine. So Secretary Bessent, you are one of the president's top economic advisors. Let's just start with a little truth-telling about the Trump economy 1 year in. Affordability is the top concern for Americans across the country. Donald Trump has called affordability, I want to get this right, a hoax. He's called it a scam. He's called it a con job. You're the Secretary of Treasury. You know the numbers. Is affordability a hoax, a scam, or a con job?
Senator, it may be a bit nuanced for you, but what President Trump is referring to is the media saying that the affordability crisis was generated by this administration when it was you and President Biden who destroyed the buying power of the American people. So there is an affordability crisis, and you were front and center in it.
So let me make sure that I understand. Donald Trump is not saying that affordability, what's happening to families right now, is a hoax?
He is saying that trying to lay the blame at this administration rather than the Biden-Warren economy is a hoax.
Okay, so it all happened before he got it. And everything that's happened since then, nothing is a hoax here.
21.5% cumulative inflation.
Let me just ask about what's happened in the 1 year that Donald Trump has been president. Last week, President Trump said, quote, "We have the groceries going down." Did grocery prices drop in 2025?
Numerous prices have.
Did grocery prices drop in 2025?
Numerous grocery prices have gone down.
I'm sorry, I don't know if you can't hear me. Did grocery prices drop in 2025?
Numerous grocery prices have gone down.
Some of them.
And in fact,
have
we have seen inflation at 2.1% for the past 3 months.
Have you seen the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that is Donald Trump's own Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers, that report that grocery prices were 2.4% higher at the end of 2025 than they were at the end of 2024. Trump's own Department of Agriculture has projected that those prices would climb higher in 2026. And under Donald Trump, families are paying more and more for groceries. So if you're just going to insult people by denying the facts that are out there and tell people they're doing great when they're struggling, I think that's just another way to say you don't have a plan to bring down these prices. You're not willing to admit the failures of the Trump administration.
Senator.
I will ask you a question in just a sec here. It's not just groceries. The numbers from Trump's own economic agency show that Americans are paying more for utility bills, more for health care, more for housing construction. Families aren't fooled by these lies. Mr. Secretary, you owe it to American families to own up what's going on. And Secretary Besant, I have one more question for you while I have you here. You ran the search for Donald Trump's Fed chair nominee, and Trump promised, quote, anyone that disagrees with me will never be Fed chairman. Kevin Warsh got the nod last Friday, and then over the weekend, Donald Trump joked that he would sue Mr. Warsh if he failed to lower interest rates. At least, I think it was a joke. But just in case, this should be an easy one, Mr. Secretary. Can you commit right here and now that Trump's Fed nominee, Kevin Warsh, will not be sued, will not be investigated by the Department of Justice if he doesn't cut interest rates exactly the way that Donald Trump wants?
That is up to the president. Can you commit that you will?
I'm sorry.
Can you commit that you will not hold up?
He won't be sued if he doesn't drop interest rates.
Can you?
And he won't be criminally investigated.
The president also made a joke about you that I won't repeat, Senator Warren.
That was the
Oh, actually, I
easy
will.
one.
He said he had reservations.
You know, if this was a joke, why not just say so?
It was a joke, and he made a joke about you too, Senator Warren.
Yes, he
got a
did.
lot of laughs. Got a lot of laughs.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to respond to that.
I do want to respond.
What I can
I don't
tell you
think
too
the American
is
people
Mr.
are
Warsh
laughing.
is highly qualified.
They're the ones who are
and
struggling
why
with
don't you
affordability.
why don't you tell the nation what you told me, that you held up Chair Powell's
Secretary,
renomination?
We're going to move on to the next one. Senator Rounds, the floor is yours.
เว็บไซต์นี้สามารถช่วยพัฒนาทักษะการอ่านและการฟังภาษาอังกฤษของคุณได้เป็นอย่างดีด้วย AI ประโยคภาษาอังกฤษจะถูกแยกเป็นวลีสั้นๆที่เข้าใจง่ายคุณปรับความเร็วหยุดหรือย้อนกลับได้ตามต้องการเพื่อให้เข้าใจทุกประโยคเว็บไซต์รองรับการแปลถึง20ภาษาทำให้การเรียนรู้เป็นเรื่องง่ายเพียงพิมพ์ใน as.com ในเบราว์เซอร์ของคุณแล้วลองใช้ได้เลย